Hi, Vinay. Great to see you again.
Pleasure meeting you also, Michele.
I wanted to, I'm so curious about you. You were a professor, an esteemed professor at a university, and then you left and joined Rapid Canvas. So tell me, why did you join Rapid Canvas, and what's your role at Rapid Canvas?
Between being a professor and joining Rapid Canvas, I also had a stint at a couple of other startups. But as I was exiting my previous startup, I got in touch with one of the leaders at Rapid Canvas, early stage leaders at that time. And she invited me for a conversation with the founders, and it was a happy conversation. Originally, we had a strategy of how do we want to set up the outreach, bring in more partners, and help us scale. And I wanted to help the founding team with enabling that strategy, but eventually I found that there is a lot more scope for me to do something here. And AI was a booming area. Always had passion for it, and I could not say no to the offer. That's how I joined the team.
Awesome. Thank you. So you just wrote a piece that's really interesting about AI and the Great Divide, and the idea that a few big companies are making just massive investments in AI, and then there's tens of thousands of other businesses that are sort of in the outside looking in. Can you tell me, like, what's going on? Tell me a little bit more about that.
My experience might be biased by who I'm interacting with, and I'm predominantly working in the developing economies, so it might be a slightly one-sided perspective. But the reality that I'm seeing is that the hyperscalers and the level of investment that they make in AI is huge, and the productivity gains that we often talk about at the individual level are extremely easy to scale when you can make that kind of an investment. The problematic part is for organizations that are not heavily invested in tech, nor are tech trailblazers, right? For them, the challenge is how do you cut through the jazz? How do you make sure that you have reasonable expectations from AI? Like, what can AI do that your regular, let us say, enterprise technologies cannot do, right? How do you realize the ROI? Those are challenges. In one of the conversations, I must point out this, right? In one of the conversations that I had, I found a very interesting feeling that a CEO mentioned with me. He said, um, "We need the world to educate us on what the best practices are, and until then, I would prefer waiting before I implement AI." So it's not lack of ambition; it's lack of clarity on what to do with AI, right? So there is ambition, but there is also a concern that people are just burning out money, chasing POCs, not being able to realize ROI. I think now the collective consciousness is kicking in where people are saying, let's be smart. These hyperscalers will try do something. There will be proven use cases coming out. There will be best practices laid out. Someone will come educate us, or we will invest our time educating ourselves, and eventually then we will make an investment in AI. I think that is where the divide is. The tech trailblazers taking off on their own tracks, and the rest of the world trying to just follow in their footsteps.
So that then leads me to ponder, what's the best way for a company to identify an AI project that's going to make a meaningful difference to their business, right? And how do they find that sweet spot so they can maximize their return on their AI investment?
That's a very good question, but the answers can be very, very tricky, right? Depending on how businesses lead themselves, depending on how businesses think about technology. Also depending on how people inside the company react to an investment in technology like AI. But that said, I will share with you what I've noticed. Few things, right? One is, again, as we talk about these hyperscalers have made it a habit to produce tons of documentation to just educate what some of their customers are doing successfully with AI. And for example, Google has outlined practically 600 different use cases where AI is giving good results for some of the customers. Referring to that kind of a documentation is a good starting point. Now, will that readily help? Can you compare your business with a business that Google is talking about? Maybe, maybe not. But in general, um, again, from all the conversations that I've had, I developed a very simple framework, extremely simple framework for someone who is just beginning to think about AI. And that is, if you have a ton of repetitive tasks inside the company,
Hmm.
think about automating. It's not a sweet spot for AI. It's a sweet spot for automation, right?
Yep.
Clarifying what is AI, what is not AI. Don't think AI is for repetitive tasks. You could use AI for repetitive tasks if there is a creative element, if there is a decision making element, we will get there. But if it's repetitive tasks, think of automation first. And the gains are usually productivity and scale, right? The second nature of tasks that you're talking about inside a company are the creative tasks. And with respect to creative tasks, I often ask the companies to talk to their people and see if AI is a good tool to augment the human intelligence, right? So think about designers, think about, let us say, writers. You could use generative AI for inspiration. You could use AI as a brainstorming tool. You could use AI to just diversify your range of thinking. Uh,
Hmm.
so I say, if you have a lot of creative activity in the company, and you have people who think that they will be super powered using AI, then your sweet spot is just elevating the quality of work. Augment people with AI, and you would see the gains in the quality of work, right? And the third part, which is to me the more critical and a part that enterprises should focus on, is decision making tasks. Right? Again, you could say decision making at the lower level, tactical level, operational, strategic, doesn't matter. But as long as you're talking about making decisions of a certain degree of complexity, where you are looking at diverse kinds of data signals, you would typically need a human being, human intelligence to make a decision. If you want to use AI for tasks like those, then you're really, really in the realm of AI, in the best, hottest sweet spot of using AI, because the gains are not just scale, productivity, quality. The gains are transformational. The gains are evolutionary, right?
Yeah, so that mirrors my experience, which is if many times, right, today, when we think about decision systems or anything that helps to enable making decisions, they really give you one answer. And the real world has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of complexity associated with it, right? And so what AI helps them to enable is more simulations to evaluate many different possible answers, right? And look at different scenarios. And now what that does is give a business a lot of resiliency and a lot more, like you're saying, opportunity to realize gains, right? Because it may be opportunities that the people hadn't identified, right? And so now all of a sudden you have a scenario that kind of opens up many other possibilities in an organization. That makes a lot of sense, that you're helping people distinguish between pure automation versus repetitive tasks and creative. Like the creative is great for generative AI, right? But that's
True.
not necessary, and there's a lot of confusion today between Gen AI and AI that can make a huge business difference to their bottom line.
True.
So
I mean,
tell me,
again,
okay.
sorry, just to add a couple of points there, right? Number one, how this framework helped me is not just in helping the enterprises see where AI can be implemented, but also clarify to participants in AI projects, think about whether they are really getting substituted or whether they're really getting augmented, because there are those concerns also. The moment there is investment in tech, we've seen people getting worried about whether they will be replaced. And the reality is, people won't be replaced with tech, right? I mean, if people are worried about tech coming and replacing them, they're probably already in the wrong job, right?
True.
Uh,
Yep.
e- and it may not be AI that is taking away their job. It might as well be a simple automation taking away their job. So
Yep.
that's not the point. So we often have to deal with situations where we are telling people to have a more realistic measure of the change, right? That you are doing a job in a manner today, and that might be different tomorrow, and your own role might evolve. But see and appreciate that point more than worrying about whether AI is replacing you,
Hmm.
right?
Okay, I understand that you work with a lot of companies outside of the US, China, and the EU. And that's where the media and all the hype is coming from, is out of those three large markets, right? Where, like you said, the hyperscalers are making these big investments. And working outside in the rest of the world has got to be exciting, because that's like greenfield, where people really, there's a lot of opportunity for gains and AI transformation outside of that. So tell me a little bit about a project that you're working on that's outside of those three core markets.
Yeah, again, I'm fortunate to be in that situation because I get to work in markets like India and Africa, and very often I get to meet people, like I said, who are high on aspiration, very high on ambition, very high on energy for execution also, but sometimes not as informed about technology as let us say the more developed economies like US are. So what it allows someone like me to do is really get into a position where I can work very closely with the customer, setting the right expectations, educating them, taking the time to educate them, working on realistic vision setting, and then building the project step by step. More often, these projects also start with something as simple as being ready for AI, and not necessarily directly plunging into AI, right? So um,
So tell me what you mean by that. How do you get them ready for AI?
So most people again think that you could somehow enable AI right out of the box. Generative AI will do some magic and all of that. The reality is, unless you have put your mind and understand what kind of data constitutes what you call as context for AI to make a decision, or what kind of data needs to go into making a particular decision, if you haven't done that homework, the preparatory work inside the company, I mean, technology is a technology. It's not going to come and somehow automatically do magic, right? It's not going to readily guide you. Um, uh, th- there is preparation work. I mean, think of major enterprises. I can see data cataloging itself being a massive exercise, right? You don't do data cataloging. You don't have a realistic picture of what dots to connect. What are you going to do with AI? If you are confused, if you don't do that preparation yourself, you're going to only confuse AI more. And what you cannot do, AI cannot do. Right? So that's how we actually. I mean, again, I'm giving you one perspective, but again, in the developing economies that I work with, the preparation is more at lower level, where we talk about what formats the data is in. Is it adequate for us to implement AI? What's the ambition? Should we do some process improvements so that we capture more data? How do we set up the data pipelines? How do we make sure that the data is flowing to the right people at the right times with right kinds of access controls? And then make sure that decisions are being made, people feel safe, secure. Maybe mimic that even before we implement AI, just to get everybody's buy-in, and then go ahead and implement, right? So one of the projects that we worked on, and this is my favorite for a lot of reasons, is a project that we did for an organization called DPCR. It's Djibouti Port Corridor Road Authorities. The reason why it's a special project is because it has not just an ROI angle, but also a humanness angle, right? Because the objective of the project was very simple. We wanted to use computer vision to look at the roads and find out what kind of damage the roads have, just so that the field engineers are able to estimate what kind of repair work needs to be done on the roads. Now, when this kind of an idea came in, it was not a new idea, at least for me. It was not a new idea for several others in the company, because we had seen these implementations in Brazil. We had seen these implementations in the US. It was not a new project. It was a new project for Africa, the country where we were working, but it was not a new project for us generally in our experience. So we went in with the assumption that, okay, this should be an easy project. We should finish it fast. The reality is that in the process of doing the project, we've learned a lot of lessons. Number one, in Djibouti, um, we are actually helping the field engineers a lot more than we could be helping the field engineers anywhere else in the world, just because the temperature in Djibouti could be upwards of 45 degrees centigrade. And in few months of the year, it could be upwards of 50 degrees centigrade. So there is no way you can really ask a field engineer to go on the road, inspect maybe like I don't know 500 miles of road, go in a car, and then come back and prepare a report. That's insane amount of work under those harsh weather conditions to take up, right?
Yep.
And these guys, because it's a port corridor system, and because there is a lot of trucking movement between Djibouti and Ethiopia, the roads are heavily used. It's a national asset, the road itself. And there was so much learning, right? So there's a human angle to that. And the second part is, it was also fascinating to see the kind of commitment that an organization like that has in enabling and getting to that vision. So what they did was, I mean, we thought we were just helping the field engineers. What we also found out was that harsh weather conditions can cause problems even for machinery. So even the GoPro cameras that were installed to collect the footage, the video footage, they would fail after 15 minutes. So we had to find workarounds, even from a hardware point of view, software point of view, to continuously try, figure out what can make the whole project work, and so on. And that was absolutely a fascinating experience, to just stick with the company, understand how to make it work. And again, one big lesson for me in this whole exercise was, once you agree on a vision, I think both parties commit to understanding what it takes to achieve the vision, and no party ever steps back. So despite having challenges that were not really foreseen, not really estimable, right? You cannot sit and plan for harsh weather conditions, right? There were also torrential rains that swept away roads sometime in the middle of the project. So you can't really plan for those things. But despite all of that, I think we still built a project, and we released. And we recently won an award called the Intelligent ICT Awards. And the DPCR received it in Johannesburg very recently. So projects like those actually make me feel very, very proud. And now we are going to expand the impact of that project to go ahead and help the drivers, so that they understand what is a safe route, just give them more predictable conditions. If there's an accident, probably inform the port corridor authorities, so that they can jump into swift action. I mean, the potential of what can be done with computer vision is now slowly beginning to blossom.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that is that you didn't try and swallow the whole elephant, like do something really huge and monumental. And by doing that, you were able to be a lot more agile and a lot faster, right? So like you started with the field engineers, you learned from that, you were able to take those lessons and apply them to the next iteration or next phase, right? And you're continuing to build momentum. And in organizations, I think that's huge what you're doing, because then people see success, and they can build momentum around it, right? And they build credibility, because that's the other thing, that's the elephant in the room that people oftentimes don't talk about with AI, is that an executive may buy into AI, but the people who are on the front lines have difficulty with, they're not familiar with the technology, right? And they're like, I've got 30 years of experience. How can a machine tell me, something better, right? And now all of a sudden, like, they're like, oh, this is making my job better, making it maybe safer for me, making, all these benefits that they may not have thought about, but they have to build that credibility in the AI that is being developed. So, so it's a beautiful use case, like, because it's helping people, like you said, and it's helping a country, right, to be more sustainable as well. So that's awesome. So tell me, like, if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about how they can benefit from this AI transformation, how can they get in touch with you and your team?
Just visit Rapid Canvas website, contact us page, send us just a query, tell us what you're looking for, and one of us will be with you immediately.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for your time today, Vinay. It was great chatting with you.
Pleasure, Buzz. Thank you.